the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Grimace from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine. Comebacks in the night, keep dreams alive. Fighting tooth and nail just to survive. City's heartbeat echoes in our chant. Grit and glory is all we want. Brooklyn to Queens, hear the roar. From laughter to blood in every scar. Living legends made on this ground. From silence we scream, make a sound. Rising high, falling low, repeat again. Cycles of the game, digged into the pen. Graffiti tales spray on the wall. Met saga, forever stand tall. Rivals sneer, but we push on through. Every heartbeat bleeds, orange and blue. Grimace fades, turn into a storm. In the Mets family, we are reborn.
Welcome to Talkin' Mets with Rob. Subscribe to the channel for all your New York Mets in-game live, pre-game, post-game, round-table podcast, and all the breaking news for our New York Mets. Enjoy the show and let's go Mets.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channel. And with some breaking news here, obviously the New York Mets have re-signed Jesse Winker to a one-year deal. The money hasn't really been discussed yet. I haven't seen it yet from any reporters, but there's definitely a return to Queens for Jesse Winker, a fan favorite. I do apologize if my Wi-Fi is a little messed up right now for some reason, but it should be coming back rather shortly. So if I'm breaking up a little bit, I do apologize, but we do got one of the fan favorites back from the 2024 season in Jesse Winker. And that is just, and thank you, Brad. It is 1 year, $8 million. So again, he is in addition, the Mets needed back. Let's be honest. He was one of the grit guys, one of the emotional guys on this team, along with Jose Iglesias, that weren't the best players on the team. We all know that, but they meant so much to this team, especially when the Mets got Winker from the Nationals in a trade at the deadline. It was one of the bigger additions the Mets got, along with getting Jose Iglesias, bringing him up from the minors. It just seemed like a dynamic that was just perfect. And right now, Jesse Winker, again, he's going to be a bench player. He's going to be a DH. He's going to be multiple areas that the Mets can use him on, as obviously what we've seen from him last year. And depending on what else the Mets do the rest of the season or rest of the offseason, then we'll have an opportunity to see what he's actually going to do and where he's going to play most of the time. But it is good news that Winker is back. The Mets still have a lot of work to do. But again, if you're just tuning in, breaking news, Jesse Winker is returning to the New York Mets. And Joe, Winker doesn't stink, all right? He's not going to start for the New York Mets. He's a bench player, right? This is not earth-shattering news. I think he was vital to what the Mets did last year when he got traded to the Mets from the Washington. He's not a great player. He could be a starting player, an outfielder for another team. He's not going to be a starter for the New York Mets. All right. The Mets right now have a starter in outfield. Jesse Winker is a bench player. He's going to be part of a DH platoon, most likely, or even be one of the legit DHs in this lineup. That's fine. Right. You could, and no name. Exactly. Right. You can DH. If the Mets don't do anything with Marte, it could be Marte and Winker as the DHs. Marte hits against lefties, and Winker will be the right-hander. What you do, you keep Marte healthy. You don't have to play him on the field. You can DH him. Marte still has a very good bat. As we all remember, Marte was the most clutch performer in the month of September and in the playoffs when it comes to the bats. So Jesse Winker and Starlin Marte as DH platoons makes sense for this team. And that's where we are about when it comes to the roster at this point. Again, there's still a month until spring training. There's still multiple free agents out there. There's possible trades out there as well that could, change things. But as of right now, it kind of makes sense that bringing back Jesse Winker just made sense, right? Obviously, we're not. If Jesse Winker was the starting left fielder for the New York Mets, or even, I wouldn't be happy. But that's not going to be the case. So it's not the end of the world that Jesse Winker is, on this team, right? I'm not saying he's a great player, but he fits this team well. And the problem with the Mets over the years, why they were unsuccessful, was they brought in guys that just weren't a good fit, right? JD Martinez, as much as I thought he would be a good addition, he just didn't fit well with the team, right? He might have been influential in the clubhouse and, be a presence, but it just didn't feel like he fit, right? As soon as Jesse Winker got traded from the Nationals to the Mets, he just fit like a perfect pair of pants. It just fit perfectly, just like Jose Iglesias did. These weren't the best players on the team, but they seemed like they were one of the most impactful Mets when they joined the team. And that's important. And Robert, I am going to check Will Simon in just a second. All right, hold on. Let's see. Will Salmon. What's going on with Will Salmon right now? Let's see. I know a lot of people are talking about Plan B. All right. Hold on. Will Salmon. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Let's see what's going on here. Are you talking about what he wrote in the New York Times in regards to Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Because I know he said something about Pete. But he also did a report about Vladimir Guerrero. And, talking about Vladimir Guerrero is still in talks with the Blue Jays about extension. But again, if the Blue Jays are in on Pete Alonso, and guys, if you haven't heard, the Mets, this has been reported, Andy Martino, Will Salmon, John Heyman, multiple reporters have reported this down, that the Mets believe that Pete Alonso will not be on the Mets in 2025. Like that seems like the Mets are pivoting and Pete Alonso is going elsewhere. That's what it seems like at the moment. And that there are talks between the Blue Jays and Pete Alonso. If Pete Alonso goes to the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be one very unhappy player. He is not moving to third base in his contract year. He's just not going to do it. Now, I guess he could see it as, well, he can play multiple positions. He played a little bit last year at third base, but I don't think he wants to move positions in his contract year. If he has a bad season defensively, like, that's not going to help him overall in his contract year. So you just have to think that he is not going to be happy and probably wants to be traded. So I find that very hard to believe that if the Blue Jays bring in Pete Alonso and you sign him to a 3-year deal, even if there is an opt-out, Vlad Guerrero is not going to be happy about that. So I just feel like that could lean to the Mets going after and pushing harder for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And, well, Joe, I don't know what you're really talking about when he's saying complaining about Jesse Winker. Why are we complaining about a bench player? If we're complaining about a bench player, that means Nimmo's hurt, Juan Soto isn't doing what he's supposed to do, and Siri or Tyron Taylor is not doing their job in center field. Like, if Winker's not starting, it shouldn't be a big deal. And again, Winker, if he's going to be the majority DH for the most of the time, he can't hit lefties. So it makes sense to have a right-handed bat to platoon with him at the DH spot. And as of right now, it would be Winker and Marte, which is fine, right? Winker can play sporadically in the outfield when you need him, like 2-3 times a week. You can, and with Marte, you can DH him and you keep Marte healthy and you keep that bat in the lineup as well. So it's not the end of the world. We're making it seem like Winker is is a starting outfielder for this team. If that was the case, I would be on board with you, right? Winker is not good enough, in my opinion, to be an everyday starter for this team. Maybe for the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Chicago White Sox, but not for the New York Mets. So he plays with some grit. There is no mistaking that Winker was a big part of this team going through the later part of the season into the playoffs. It was a big deal. And by the way, he had one of the better numbers in the playoffs clutch as a clutch hitter. So, yeah, I take that every day of the week. And yeah, he is an asshole, right? He pisses the other team off. He gets under the skin of other teams, right? That matters. That really does matter. And and David, I'm sorry. I understand people continue to talk about Boris being the problem with the Pete Alonso situation, but Pete Alonso did turn down 7 years, 158 prior to hiring Scott Boras. He had another agent when he declined that offer, right? Pete Alonso is responsible for hiring Scott Boras. What do you think Pete Alonso, and this is why I kept on telling Met fans that are too, like, they're in a different world when it comes to Pete Alonso. I said as soon as he signed Scott Boras, there was a better chance that Pete Alonso was not going to be a New York Met than actually a New York Met. I've said that for a while. Nobody wanted to believe me. People think because I don't think Pete Alonso is worth a long-term deal that I'm just spewing negative nonsense. It's not. The day Pete Alonso hired Scott Boras and he declined that deal, because it was like a 2-week difference. When Pete Alonso declined that 7 for 158, he fired his agent and hired Scott Boras. Why do you think he did that? He knew every player that hired Scott Boras knows what Scott Boras is. He's a viper. He's a snake. He will do anything he can, even if it's for the team that everybody wants him to go to. He will go somewhere else just to get more money for his client. Pete Alonso knows this. So stop blaming Scott Boras for what's going on with Pete Alonso and the Mets. Pete Alonso hired Scott Boras. He knows what Scott Boras is. These players aren't stupid. So stop blaming Scott Boras and start blaming Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso declined 2 offers from the New York Mets over a year. Why should the Mets bend over and accept the deal that Alonso exclusively gave to the Mets? Like, come on. Like, let's stop here. Let's stop not blaming Pete Alonso for any of this. Pete Alonso hired Scott Boras. He is responsible for his agent. He knew what Scott Boras is. Every player that hires Scott Boras knows what he is. So this is not Boras. This is Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is the boss. We forget about that. The players are the bosses of their agents. Pete Alonso can step in tomorrow and say, just take the 3 for 90 from the Mets. Why do the Mets have to say, oh, we'll take your exclusive deal? That's nonsense. That's silly. Because if you do that to Pete Alonso, why wouldn't any player come with a different offer and say you should take this offer? Because what's going to happen is, and this was, people don't realize this can be a trickle-down effect with the Pete Alonso situation. If the Mets say, all right, Pete, we'll give you your exclusive offer and we'll give that to you, why would that stop any other player that is a free agent that either was a Met or is from another team going to the Mets and saying, well, you gave Pete Alonso that offer. Here, I want this exclusive offer. Like, you're going to have more players coming to the Mets on stupid deals because what if that 3-year deal that Pete Alonso offered is $40 million a year? Everybody's okay with that? Everybody's just fine with that all of a sudden? Why would another player not do the same thing? Like, that's the problem here. Like, you can't just, bow down and say, okay, Pete, yeah. The Mets gave him a very fair offer. There is no other team, and even if Pete Alonso goes to the Blue Jays, he's going on a 3-year deal. So how much, like, if Toronto wants to pay him $40+ million for 3 years, let him do it. All they're doing is making a disgruntled Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So the Blue Jays are screwing themselves probably in the long run because Pete Alonso is not better than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If they sign Pete Alonso and trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they'll realize how much difference that player is to the other player. He's not going to make Toronto better. All right, let's make that a fact. Right? He hits 40 points less than Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s. He hits less doubles. The only thing Pete Alonso does better is probably power, but it's not that by much. So let's not act like the Blue Jays are doing, like Pete Alonso going to the Blue Jays is going to make them a perennial team, because it's not. And I find it very hard to believe that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in his contract year is going to go to move to third base for Pete Alonso, who's not better than him, and then be okay with that in a contract year. He's going to force his way out of there, because it just doesn't make sense for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It really doesn't. No name. I don't care about the Yankees. That doesn't concern me. They're in the American League. They don't affect the Mets at all. All right, let's see. Pete Alonso wants an opt-out, and the Mets do not. No, Daniel, that's wrong. In their 3 years, $90 million offer, they gave him an opt-out after the first year. According to the reports, Pete Alonso gave an exclusive offer that is 3 years for whatever amount of money with 2 opt-outs. The Mets would not negotiate an extra opt-out in that contract. They gave him at least 1 opt-out. So it's clearly about the money per year. Alonso is probably asking way more than $30 million per year. And I'm sorry. I would even be willing to give him $35, $36 million a year. I'm sorry. You're not worth $7, $8 million more than Matt Olson or Freddie Freeman, or even Vladimir Guerrero for that matter, who got $28 million in arbitration. Sorry. I'm just not doing it. And Mike, I understand it. They still need to get one legit bat, but we act like there's not another bat out there, right? I still think the Mets, look, if the Blue Jays sign Pete Alonso, the New York Mets are going to go after Vlad Guerrero. Vlad Guerrero is going to push for a trade. Like, and even if they try to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I still think Anthony Santander is a possibility, or Alex Bregman is a possibility, because you can move Vientos to first base. Like, there's options out there. Those are really good bats that you can put in that lineup. So, John, what do I think is going through Soto's mind right now? $765 million. Like, the Mets aren't going to go into the season like they're not going to have a good team, right? They need at least one more bat in their lineup, particularly 2 bats in the lineup. Again, if Winker and Marte is going to be a DH, you get Anthony Santander, you get Alex Bregman, you're a better team than when you were last year. You add Juan Soto, and you get a guy in Alex Bregman who's a 25 to 30 home run guy. He's a 260 hitter. He's one of the most clutchest players in baseball, specifically in the playoffs. And if you get Anthony Santander, I'm not saying he's going to hit 40-plus home runs. I don't believe he will. But he can easily hit 25 to 30, bat you 260, hit you 80 to 85, 80 to 90 RBIs. He's going to do that. So we're not losing that much production. Like, we have to understand that. We're gaining production just based on Juan Soto being on this team. You have to understand that. Well, Scott, I said the same thing. I said it for a while that I don't think Pete Alonso wants to be here. I've said that for a while. You don't turn down a very fair deal of 7 for $158, which was $22 million per year, which at the time was $3 million than the arbitration number that was given to players for the qualifying offer. Well, it was around $19.5 million. So you were getting $3 million more than a qualifying offer. You were getting a few $1 million more than Matt Olson. And you were right in the middle between Matt Olson and Freddie Freeman. So you were the second highest first baseman being paid in baseball. That is very fair for a guy who is not better than either of them. So that was fair. He got security for 7 years and $22 million. He did not want that. That's on Pete Alonso. And then right after that, he hires Scott Boras. So Pete Alonso has a lot of blame here too, not just the New York Mets. He already turned down 2 offers 7 for 158 last offseason, and now with the 3 for 90 the Mets offered him. I'm sorry. I don't blame the Mets here. I really don't blame the Mets here. And again, I would be perfectly fine with Pete Alonso coming back. But I'm not giving him $35+ million because it's a short-term deal with multiple opt-outs. Like, why do the Mets have to pay more per year for a guy they're willing to give $30 million to? It's silly. It's very silly. And you can also look to get involved, especially if the Blue Jays get Pete Alonso. Vladimir Guerrero is going to push his way out of Toronto. Guarantee that. Guaranteed. Scott, so Alonso, Ken Rosendahl did say that it was the Alonso exclusive deal was 3 years with no opt-outs. Is that true? That's what he said? Because if that's true, then the Mets aren't going to do that. The Mets don't want to be tied down for 3 years with no opt-outs. Like, that gives them no advantage at all. Like, there's no leverage there. Because I think they are going to go after Vladimir Guerrero Jr., so that doesn't benefit the Mets. But, I mean, I could, let's see. Let me see something. I just wanted to see. All right. So, if that is true, that deal that Alonso offered the Mets had no opt-outs, then, look, it wouldn't be the end of the world for me, to be quite honest with you. I'd bring back Pete for that if it's similar money. But because it really doesn't take him out of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next year if that's the case. Because then you can just put Pete Alonso to DH and put Vlad at first base if you really wanted to do that. Wilfredo, no, I don't think the Wicker sign had anything to do with it either. I just think it sped it along a little bit. Like, I think the Winker situation could have waited a little longer. But since this Pete Alonso situation is kind of coming to a head a little bit and coming to a finale, I think the Mets were just already moving on. Like, I already think the Mets already have plans post Pete Alonso, right? And they're doing it now. Like, I truly believe that the Pete Alonso situation has been holding them up. Like, I don't think it should have held them up. They should be doing other things. But because of the Pete Alonso uncertainty and the amount of money he could be making, that was stopping the Mets from doing other things, because it's clear that David Stearns likes to do one thing at a time. It's just how he does it. Like, I don't agree with it, but that's how he does it. And I do think that it's either going to be Vladimir Guerrero or Anthony Santander if it's not Pete Alonso, to be quite honest with you. It just, Yordan Alvarez, the Astros are not trading them. Like, they're not doing that. Like, no. Like, it's just not happening. Well, Frank, I don't know. Like, I don't know why the Mets are staying firm on their number. But, we always complain that all these players are overpaid. And now when a team actually doesn't want to overpay a player more, because I'm sorry, Pete Alonso's not worth $30 million. He's not. He's not better than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's not better than Freddie Freeman. He's not better than Matt Olson. So him making $2 or $3 million more than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and almost $5-6 million more than Freddie Freeman and almost $10 million more than Matt Olson is silly. It shouldn't be that much. But the Mets are willing to do that to $30 million because he was a Met. Because if he wasn't, I just don't see they would do it. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to piss off a lot of Met fans, but the Met fans act like it's the MLB. They did it with DeGrom last, 2 years ago. They did that. So everybody went crazy for Jacob DeGrom, and the Rangers won the World Series, but it wasn't because of Jacob DeGrom. He was hurt. So do I get why Met fans are upset? Of course, right? Pete Alonso, when nothing was going right for the New York Mets, he came up in 2019, right? Lit a fire under the New York Mets fan base. He hit the rookie home run record, which, is cool and everything. But again, the Mets didn't make the playoffs that year. They didn't make it in 2019. They didn't make it in 2020. They didn't make it in 2021, right? That was basically all Pete Alonso's face of the franchise team at that time, right? Lindor got here, and 2 years later, the Mets made the playoffs. Obviously, it was a disaster in 2022 later on in the season and into the playoffs, obviously. And then in 2024, the Mets make the playoffs when Lindor had the MVP season and Pete Alonso had his worst year of his career, right? So Pete Alonso has had great numbers, but breaking down those numbers, they weren't as good if you break them down into the most important numbers, which are late inning numbers, clutch numbers, runners in scoring position. He's had a problem throughout his career, except for 2019. Every other year, even one of his better years in 2022, they weren't good numbers in clutch situations, in late innings, in run production situations. He just wasn't good. Okay, Rosie. So Will Salmon says the Mets deal had no opt-outs. Pete's deal had opt-outs. Okay, interesting. Yeah, see, Rosie, I can understand why a Jays reporter is saying they wouldn't trade Vlad, but why would Vladimir Guerrero be excited to move positions for a guy that's not better than him and move to third base in a contract year? Now, could that benefit Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because he can play multiple positions? He can show he can play third base as well. I mean, sure. I don't like the Blue Jays. Are they going to extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or just go with the flow and hope for the best for Vlad Guerrero Jr.? Because after pitchers in spring training starts, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is not negotiating anymore. So it's interesting. Now, I still don't believe Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be excited about that. The Blue Jays, I mean, they could get Roki Sasaki as well. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to go to California, but it would be interesting. But I don't see that. I don't see how that benefits Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I really don't. I don't think so. Yeah, well, I don't believe Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would be excited about that. Like, because even if they do sign him, Pete Alonso, and they give him the 3-year deal with opt-outs, right? I don't think how can Vladimir Guerrero get thrown from his position for a player that's not better than him? And you're a lifelong Blue Jay. Like, it's silly. Like, I just don't see it. Yes, Winker is back, and we'll see how that goes. Going forward, right? I still think right now it looks like a Marte Winker platoon at DH, which is perfectly fine, right? We know Marte can hit lefties. We know Winker can hit righties. It's a perfect platoon, right? I like guys that can actually hit in situations as a platoon, and it worked out for a little while in the DH spot with Winker and with Marte when he actually played a little bit. When he actually played, I like that a little bit more. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Brad. Well, Brad, that's what I'm saying. Like, what if Vladimir Guerrero played a little bit of third base last year, but he's a better first baseman than third baseman. He's a Gold Glover at first base, right? I don't see him risking having a bad season at third base that might affect him at the plate as well and hurt his chances a little bit of making the buku bucks or the big bucks going forward. So it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm sorry. You really think Toronto is going to keep around a disgruntled Vladimir Guerrero Jr. who is already not, and especially if the Blue Jays, and again, I don't see them extending Vladimir Guerrero Jr. once they get Pete Alonso. It doesn't make sense. Why would Vlad do that? It really does not make sense. Yeah, I don't understand if look, I think there's more to it. We still don't know the exact number Pete Alonso offered the Mets. I think it's still a high AAV. I think it's opt-outs and high AAV, probably much higher than the $30 million. That's the only thing I can think of. So yeah, I think it is money. I don't think the Mets would stop negotiating with Pete Alonso for opt-outs. That if that's the case, that is a bad job by David Stearns. And I'm the first one to say that. Again, I don't see Pete Alonso in the same light as some Met fans, but that would be a bad job by David Stearns. If it's only about opt-outs, that would be silly. If Pete Alonso signs for similar money per, even if it's 31, 32, even $33 million per year, I would be upset about that because that's silly for David Stearns, right? But again, we're also talking about Steve Cohen, who can step in at any moment. And if Steve Cohen doesn't step into this Pete Alonso situation, then Steve Cohen didn't want to do much more for Pete Alonso either. So let's think about that. Joel, I think he's asking for more. I don't even think $35 million is a breaking point, to be quite honest with you. It's $5 million per year. I don't think the Mets are going to walk away for $5 million. Now, if it's four, I think it has to be $40 million. I think it's that. Like, it has to be $40 million a year. Like, and we'll see. Look, if the Blue Jays sign Pete Alonso for 3 years, $40 million a year with opt-outs, that is $10 million over what the Mets offered. That's a lot. That is a lot. I'm sorry. F-ball, well, there is options. There's Anthony Santander. There's trading for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right? There's also Alex Bregman you can put at third base, move Vientos to first base. There's options out there. And again, I'm going to tell you this right now. If the Mets move Vientos to first base and say we're going to go internally at third base and bring in Mauricio at third base, I'm not going to be a very happy camper at all. That getting Juan Soto in here is great, but that does not do nothing for me. You have a questionable rotation. Let's say if the Mets do get Tanner Scott in the bullpen and solidify a very good bullpen, like almost top 3 bullpen in baseball, it still is not going to do enough for me. Too many question marks in the rotation. Juan Soto, along with Nimmo and Lindor and Vientos, is fine, but I don't know how Mauricio is going to come back from this knee injury. I liked him. I think he can have a very good bat, but that was prior to his injury. We don't know how guys come back from injury. We just don't know. So, yeah, well, that's the other thing, Rosie. That's why I don't think Mauricio is going to be an option at third base. Like, Acuna is more of a shortstop, second baseman, not really a third baseman. Jet Williams is a shortstop, second base, center fielder. So, it can't be that, right? That's why I'm thinking the Mets are, I think, as soon as Pete Alonso signs elsewhere, I already think the Mets, look, Jesse Winker happened right away once this Pete Alonso situation happened, as they finally moved far apart. And it seemed like there's a breakup there. The Winker deal happened. So I think the Mets already have plans, because here's the thing, guys. Wasn't it like a week and a half ago the Toronto Blue Jays offered Anthony Santander 4 years, $82 million? If that's the best deal he's going to get, why hasn't he signed there? I think Santander does not want to go to the Blue Jays. I think that there's the Mets or another team is out there for Santander that is just waiting until the Pete Alonso situation. Again, I think moves are going to happen rather quickly once Pete Alonso's situation is dealt with. If the Mets are officially moving off of Pete Alonso, I'm expecting a flurry of moves. Mike, see, okay, we know the Dodgers are better than everybody, right? Let's not act like the Phillies are better. All right, the Mets beat the Phillies last year, right? The Phillies have been trickling down every single season. They made the World Series, they lost. They went to the NLCS the year before. After that, they lost. They made the NLDS last year. The Mets beat them. So they've been losing, getting further and further away from the World Series in the last 3 seasons, right? Just because the Phillies have a really good pitching staff doesn't mean they're better, right? They all, it's trickle down seasons. The Braves, how are they better? They just lost Max Fried. They haven't done anything in their rotation. They haven't done anything this offseason, right? Is their lineup better? Sure. But Acuna is coming back after another knee injury, and the Braves lineup will be healthier for sure. Well, presumably healthier, but their rotation isn't the same. So we'll have to wait and see. Buster didn't come up with the Santander report. Dwayne, the Mets are weaker than last year. Lineup wise, I'm not going to say. I mean, you just got Juan Soto in here. Like, how can it be worse than last year? Like, you replace right at the moment, you're replacing Juan Soto. You're replacing Pete Alonso with Juan Soto. That's an upgrade. Sorry, it is. It really is. So, and again, guys, the Mets won 89. Again, we're forgetting this. The Mets won 89 games last year with a bad season from Brandon Nimmo, a bad season for Pete Alonso, and basically a non-existent offensive season from Francisco Alvarez. It was Lindor, it was Vientos that were the main cogs for why the Mets lineup became what they were. And you add Juan Soto. So to say that the Mets lineup isn't better is not true. Like, I would still want another bat. To solidify this lineup even more and to make the lineup even deeper, I want another bat. Winker doesn't cut it as just a DH. And that's why I think the Mets are going to go after a Bregman, Anthony Santander, or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. One of those guys is going to be a New York Met. And I'm going to say this right now. If the Mets don't sign or sign Bregman or Santander, or don't make a trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and they use an internal option at third base, I am not going, or at first base, I am not going to be happy. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm already skeptical about the rotation. I don't care if the Mets get Tanner Scott in here, they bring in Ryan Stanek back, and they bring in another lefty for the bullpen. And it's an elite bullpen, name-wise, and it looks really good. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy at all. I'm going to tell you that right now. There is no reason why Santander, Bregman, or Guerrero is not on this team if you don't bring back Pete Alonso. It doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense to me. And again, I'm going to see it to believe it. If the Blue Jays are going to be that ballsy and sign Pete Alonso and tell Vladimir Guerrero Jr., their pride and joy, the face of their franchise, to move to third base for Pete Alonso, until that actually happens and the Blue Jays actually do it and Vlad doesn't want out, I'd be shocked. Ron, I do like Anthony Santander. For what he would bring to the New York Mets, yes. He can play first base, no problem. He can play multiple corner outfield positions if need be. And he's a 30 home run guy. I don't expect him to hit 40 home runs. All right. I'm not going to look at his contract year and go crazy. Right. But I do believe he can hit 30 home runs. He can hit 85 to 90 RBIs and bat 260. That is not too far off from what the Mets are already getting with Juan Soto. Again, if you bring in Anthony Santander with Juan Soto, that is already making your lineup deeper. If you hit 30 home runs from Santander, 30 home runs from Juan Soto, that's 60 home runs. That's already more that Pete Alonso can hit. And if you get 90 RBIs plus and 90 RBIs plus for Santander, that's over 180 RBIs. That's close to 200 RBIs. You make your lineup deeper and you make your lineup better with 2 additions to the lineup. That's a big deal. Remember, guys, Pete Alonso and Nimmo had overall bad seasons for what they're accustomed to. And the Mets still won 89 games. With Lindor and Vientos driving this lineup. Like, that was a big deal. Like, we forget about that. And even if Nimmo stays healthier and does a little bit better than last year, that is an upgrade. Juan Soto, you're replacing Pete Alonso with Juan Soto. That's an upgrade. If you bring anybody else in, Santander, Bregman, Vlad, that is already better than what the Mets had last year. Like, that's a fact. So we have to understand that. Let's see. No, I don't think they're going to trade. Vientos is not getting traded. I'd be shocked at that. No name. If the Cashman gets Nico Horner, he'll embarrass Steve Cohen. No, he will. Again, why do you think the Mets and Yankees have anything to do with each other at all? It doesn't matter. Again, Yankee fans, the Mets fans live rent-free in Yankee fans' head for some reason. It doesn't make sense. I don't care about the Yankees. I care what the Phillies done, which has been get Luzardo, which is solid, but the guy has not been healthy. And the Braves haven't done nothing. So that's what I care about. I care about the NL East. I care about the National League. I don't care about the American League. Yankees don't mean nothing to me until we play them this year. That's the only time. What is it? May and June we play them. That's when I care about them. Dwayne, he doesn't think small, though. Again, just because he's done what he did with Pete Alonso with the 3-year deal, that has nothing to do with being small. Again, if he doesn't do anything else and keeps this internal nonsense options at third base and first base, I'm not going to be happy. I'll have a lot to say about David Stearns, trust me. But we'll see. If the Mets pivot and get Anthony Santander or Bregman, that's perfectly fine. Because you already add Juan Soto and you add another bat. That is better than what the lineup was last year. The Mets had 2 guys that basically drove this team all season. It was Vientos and Lindor. Nimmo had a down season. Alonso had a bad season. That is where it's at right now. Ronnie can't play first. Ronnie can play third base. But again, is he healthy enough? I'm not sure. Yeah, but Dwayne, what scrubs, though? Because we called what he did last year scrubs, and they made the playoffs and made the NLCS, right? So before we call them scrubs, let's not act like he doesn't know what he's doing. Again, I'm not going to be happy if the Mets say, all right, we think Mauricio is going to be ready to go. He's playing third base. Vientos is playing first. I'm not going to be happy with that. But David Stearns did a good job last year. Like, you know, a lot of people, there was a lot of Met fans, and a lot of you were in this chats last year going into the season, like saying the Mets are going to barely win 75 games. They're not going to be a good team, right? So he proved us wrong. Even though I thought the Mets were going to have 87 wins, I think Chris would said 85 or 84, and they won 89. I'm not saying they can replicate that, but we can't destroy, even though I'm not going to be happy with Stearns, it's hard to kill him when he was successful last year when nobody believed in him. I won't be happy, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt. If it blows up in his face and the Mets have a bad season next year, we can destroy David Stearns. But again, we're acting like Pete Alonso is making this team a playoff team or not. That's not fair. Look, the offseason's not over. Look, if Santander is not here, Bregman or Vlad is not on this team, if Pete Alonso goes elsewhere, I don't think that's a good job by David Stearns. But it's not over yet. If the Mets get any one of those bats, I'm on board. Because nobody can tell me that the Mets aren't better with Juan Soto in the lineup, either Santander, Bregman, or Guerrero, with Lindor, with Vientos, with Nimmo. That's a better lineup. But Rosie, it's not replacing what production from Alonso. Let's stop acting like Pete Alonso was this MVP candidate. He was not. You know how bad he was last year? He was terrible last year. There was times where Pete Alonso, the teams would rather pitch to Pete Alonso than anybody else in the lineup. That can't happen. Like the production, again, you're replacing right now, at this moment, before the Mets do anything else, if Pete Alonso goes elsewhere, you replace Pete Alonso with Juan Soto. That's an upgrade. Dwayne, I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm telling you, the Mets had bad seasons from Pete Alonso and Nimmo offensively and was carried by Lindor and Vientos the entire season. And they won 89 games. Look at the numbers from Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso. They were terrible according to the back of their baseball cards. It was that bad. Yet they won 89 games. Not saying that they can replicate that. I'm not saying they will. But all you need is Nimmo to play a little bit better, and you're replacing Pete Alonso with Juan Soto. How is that not better? Dwayne, Nimmo might be on the downturn. I might be on board with you with that. But again, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But if Nimmo is healthier than last year, and I still believe that's why I think the Mets are going to go after Anthony Santander, because not only can he play first base, but you can play him in the outfield and DH Nimmo a little bit if you really need to and keep him healthy, which should make Nimmo be better at the plate. Like, that could be a possibility. But again, replacing Pete Alonso with Juan Soto is better. I'm not talking about the home runs, guys. Guys, there's more to baseball than just home runs. We got to get over the home runs. It's not the end-all be-all, obviously. Because Pete Alonso's 34 home runs last year seemed non-existent nearly the whole season. 34 home runs, I would have been okay with Pete Alonso would hit 34 home runs. But when you don't do anything with those home runs throughout the season, they were useless home runs. I would rather have Soto's 30 productive and more clutch home runs in bigger moments than Pete Alonso's 40 home runs when he only has 5 of them that were coming in big moments. Like, because that was the case last year. Out of the 34 home runs Pete Alonso hit, 5 home runs came in late clutch situations. 5. So the other 29 were basically the Mets were up big or the Mets were losing big or way too early in the game to either skew a game either way. That's a huge difference. That is a huge difference. Yeah, I agree. Like Nimmo was hurt, but again, I'm not going crazy here. Like, I'm not telling you Nimmo's going to have a 2022 type of season. I don't even think I can look at that. But if Nimmo average comes up, say 20, 30 points, which I think he can do, he can hit his 20 home runs, be productive there. That's more than what he did last year. 20, 25 home runs, it's more than what he did last year. And you get on base more as well is also important. Sanders could be a great DH, but you're not going to use him there exclusively. You're going to probably put him at first base. Or, again, I would be okay if the Mets get Anthony Santander, put him in left field, DH Nimmo, which I think would keep Nimmo more healthier. If you want to use Mauricio at third base, if they believe Mauricio is healthy enough and be ready to go to play third base and move Yantos to first base, I would be okay with that. If you get Anthony Santander and put him in left field and DH Nimmo, I do that. But again, it's harder to think. Like, Jesse Winker might not be the everyday DH. Like, the Mets still might use Winker as a platoon guy, a bench guy. DH him here and there, but, give Nimmo more days off in left field. Maybe the Winker situation is more of an importance in that situation. Again, John, I'm not saying Santander plays first base every single day, but he can play it. He actually played it a lot in the minor leagues. He did. Up in the big leagues, no. But he can do it. And also, he's a switch hitter. Yeah, Carlos, I see that's the problem. I think the Mets are thinking that Mauricio is a big part of this season coming up. Like, I think that's the case. And again, I'm not going to be okay with them putting Mauricio at third base, Vientos to first base, and do nothing else with the bat. Like, Winker's not enough. I'm sorry. John, I understand. I just said that. He didn't play a lot of first base in the big leagues, but in the minors, he's played a lot of first base. He was a first baseman drafted. The Orioles moved him to the outfield later on when he became a minor leaguer. Like, he played first base and they moved him to the outfield. So he can play first base. He's played a lot of first base in the minors. I know he didn't play a lot in the majors, but they moved him to the outfield. So he could play first base. I'm not saying he's going to be a Gold Glover. All right, I'm not saying that. So, but again, John, I understand, right? But if the Mets believe that Mauricio can be ready, they're going to do it. Like, if that's the case, if they don't, if I'm not okay with that. Like, I don't think you should move Mauricio to third base for I think the only way you move Vientos from third base if you get Alex Bregman in here. I don't think it's smart to move Vientos to first base for Mauricio, who hasn't played a lot of third base and is coming back from a knee injury. That doesn't excite me. Now, the potential is there that might excite me, but going into the season, I don't feel confident saying that, oh, we're ready to go in 2025. Like, that doesn't excite me at all. But I'm sorry, adding Santander and Soto to this lineup brings a deeper, more balanced lineup. You'll have two switch hitters in Lindor and Santander. You can move guys around a little bit more, right? I'm not saying Santander can hit 40 home runs, but he can hit 30. And with Juan Soto's 30 home runs, that is adding 60 home runs to a lineup. Let's say if Alonso can hit 40 home runs, that is still 20 home runs more in a lineup without Pete Alonso. If Alonso hits 120 RBIs, let's say 90 RBIs for Juan Soto, 90 RBIs for Santander, that's 180 RBIs. That is 60 RBIs more in a lineup. So to not get production, like, where are we going to get the production from Pete Alonso? Is that different? Because of the fact that Santander and Juan Soto bring 30 home runs apiece, 90 RBIs apiece, maybe even more for Juan Soto. You're already getting more home runs and more RBIs with two players expanding your lineup. Because with Pete Alonso, you don't expand your lineup. You just put a guy in there and you add Juan Soto. So you're only replacing your lineup with just Juan Soto. Now, again, I would be okay with Pete Alonso. I've said that many times. Like, I would be okay with that. Right? I would pair him with Juan Soto and Vientos and Lindor. I'm fine with that. And Nimmo. But, and again, if you're worried about Jose Siri as the number 8 or 9 hitter, then the Mets offense is absolutely putrid in the top of the order. Like, you can't be worrying about Jose Siri, right? The reason why we talked about Bader so much and Tyrone Taylor so much and Jeff McNeil so much was because the top of the lineup wasn't doing their job early on. That's why we talked about it. Jose Siri is not here for his bat, guys. He is here for his defense. It is protecting the Brandon Nimmos and the Juan Sotos of the world in right and left field, because Jose Siri can go get it in the left and right center field gaps. He can hit 20 home runs for you. He might bat 210, but you're not looking for Jose Siri to be a big part of this offense. He'll hit you to home runs. And again, at the bottom of the order, I'd rather have a little bit more power for a guy who might come up to lead off an inning when 7, 8, and 9's up and might hit a leadoff home run. He'll give you that power. Yes, the lineup, the average is not there, but I'm not looking for Jose Siri to be an elite offensive player here. He's your number 8 or 9 hitter. Lamar, the lineup is not scaring anybody. Well, that's not true. All right. Like, you got Lindor, you got Vientos, you got Soto. That is a damn good top 3. Now, I agree with you. If the Mets don't do nothing else, bat-wise, and they use Vientos at first, Mauricio at third base, or somebody else at third base that's internal, I won't be happy with that. I can agree. It's not going to be crazy good, but it's not bad. But they need to do more. Robert, I don't think they're moving Alvarez out of the catch scissors. Yeah, and that's another thing too, right? Santander has an 1100 OPS with runners on base compared to the 550 with Pete Alonso. Yeah, CP, again, so that report is correct, right? The Mets did offer the 3-year offer, $90 million with no opt outs. So Pete doesn't want. If Pete wants opt outs, again, I don't know how much different Pete Alonso's offer is money wise. I would be upset if the Mets wouldn't willing to give opt outs in a deal, and that's the reason why they're far apart. But I think the money is still an issue. To be quite honest, I think the Mets would give opt outs. I think Pete Alonso wants to get paid 35, $40 million with the opportunity to opt out for a longer term deal next year. So again, we'll see what happens. All right, hold on, guys. Just checking. And by the way, guys, this is the thing too. Somebody's bringing up the Red Sox with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They can't do that until they trade Cassis. I wonder if the Mets would trade for Cassis. Like that would be an interesting move for the Mets, right? Power guy. Like I'm not sure. Let me just double check. I don't remember his numbers last year. Yeah, let's see. I just want to check he's 25 years old. He didn't have a good season last year. He 241, 13 home runs, 32 RBIs. That doesn't excite me at all, to be quite honest. But that is an interesting situation. Let me see. I'm trying to just check his stats. Okay, so he only played 63 games last year. He was hurt. But in 132 games in 2023, he had 24 home runs, 65 RBIs. He's very good at first base. Ben Cassis wasn't healthy last year. Again, the Mets could think outside the box there, get a young first baseman in Cassis who has 3 years left of control, a guy that can hit 25, 30 home runs when healthy, a really good first baseman at first base, has a tremendous amount of power. I think he can hit 30 home runs, 25, 30 home runs. He batted 240. Again, let me see. He batted 263 in the year that he wasn't hurt. So that could be an option too. That could be a blessing in disguise if the Mets do that, but I'm not sure. Yeah, Joe, I of course the price is going to be high for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But again, in this, yeah, Rosie, I know they didn't want to trade, but if the Red Sox are looking at Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Cassis is a trade candidate for sure. They were willing to give up Cassis in a Crochet deal. I mean, I'm sorry, they were in another deal, in the Luis Castillo deal, but they weren't willing to do it at this time. So no, SJG, I understand in 60 games though, but just think, add another 60 games to that. That is around 26, 27 home runs, around 70, 80 RBIs. Again, if he could play 150 games, if you look at the year before in 2023 when he wasn't hurt, he had 24 home runs and 64 RBIs. Again, not crazy good. And Brad, I think they are, right? I think they know each other. I don't know where, but I know they know each other. So we'll see. Again, guys, there's a lot of options still to go. But again, to end this stream was about Jesse Winker. The Mets re-signed Jesse Winker. I think it was 1 year, $8 million. So we got the grit and the team, the player that everybody hates except the team he plays on, back to Queens. This is a guy that should have been back. He is not going to be a starter in the outfield. He's probably going to be a platoon with DH and a platoon player for the outfield. That is fine. I'll take it any day of the week. Mets re-signed Jesse Winker. We got the badass back. 4-hour bench, 4-hour DH as well. It's a good addition. Let's see what the Mets do here. The latest report is, along with the Jesse Winker situation, is that the Mets believe that Pete Alonso is not coming back to the New York Mets. We'll see. Again, it's developing. We know Pete Alonso was talking with the Toronto Blue Jays about Pete Alonso. I cannot think, and Chris, I see you're in the chat right now. I don't think for a second Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be happy if the Blue Jays sign Pete Alonso and they're going to move Vlad to third base. I'm sorry. I don't see him doing that. I don't think he'd be happy about that in a contract year because a lot of things are going to happen at third base. If he doesn't have a good season with the glove at third base and it might affect his offense going into a contract year, that is not going to make Vladimir Guerrero excited. I don't see him excited about that. I don't think Roki Sasaki is going to the Blue Jays. If he does and they sign Pete Alonso, maybe Vlad has a change of thoughts and would sign an extension and play third base. I don't know. It seems like a lot. Chris, I agree with you. I know Vladdy says he can play third base, but I don't know if he's going to be okay with Pete Alonso moving for Pete Alonso. Like, I don't know. I don't think he wants to do that. I think that hurts him because if he doesn't play well at third base and the Blue Jays don't have a good season and the offense is not there for Vlad Guerrero because he's not happy, it's going to hurt him going into his free agency period. Like, I do believe that. Yeah, see, listen, the best case scenario for the New York Mets here, if Bregman goes to the Blue Jays and they sign Pete Alonso, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is on his way out. And that puts in a perfect situation for the Mets to trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And for anybody that believes that Vlad wouldn't extend with the New York Mets, he's willing to sign an extension with the Blue Jays. They just didn't hit his number. You'd think that Steve Cohen won't get to the number Vlad would be comfortable with. It's a very similar situation with the Lindor situation. The Mets were so confident they would extend Lindor that they traded all their shortstops away on their roster for Lindor. They would do it for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., in my opinion. Oh, God, no. I don't want Anthony Rizzo. All right, guys. So, well, Dan, that's the thing, right? The Vlad wants $400+ million, right? We know that. He specifically said that. He told the Blue Jays, if you get to this number, I will sign back with you guys. I would extend with you guys. They're not doing that. So the Mets and other teams know what Vlad wants to extend. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not going to turn down $450 million if the Mets offer it to him to go to free agency for the hopes of getting $500 million. Because if he has a bad season, people are going to be a little concerned. So if whatever team trades for him is going to have a very good idea if Vlad Guerrero wants to extend. And if he's willing to extend with Toronto, he's going to want to extend with a team that trades for him. The team that trades for him is going to be a contender. So we'll see, but there's a lot going on there. So we'll see what's going to go on, but the Mets do bring back Jesse Winker 1 year, $8 million. I do a Pete Alonso video that I posted right before I went live. Check that out, guys. I go a little bit more into detail about the Pete Alonso situation and what's going on with that. With that said, guys, thank you for watching the breaking news here. The Mets re-signed Jesse Winker 1 year, $8 million. Have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you next time on probably a hot stove, probably tomorrow with myself and Chris. Have a good night, guys, and let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball.